In the 3rd year of my marriage to Julian, he finally got sick of me. He skipped my birthday, but held a delicate, soft-spoken omega in his arms, whispering sweet nothings. Omegas are just more fun. My beta at home is so stiff and boring. I've been over it for a long time. 7 years of love all worn away. I calmly signed the divorce papers. Later, the high and mighty Julian, deep in his rut, knelt at my door, trembling as he sniffed my pajamas and begged me to forgive him. But Edward, the man he saw as a rival, was holding my hand. He kicked Julian square in the chest. "You even think about looking at my husband again, and I'll rip all 3 of your legs off." I stood at the door of the private room, silently watching Julian hold a man in his lap, whispering sweet nothings. Half an hour earlier, Julian's secretary had called, asking me to come pick up a drunk Julian and take him home. But when I rushed over, I saw his delicate, soft-spoken secretary linking arms with Julian, sharing an intimate drink. Julian's eyes were full of affection as he fastened a necklace. The one-eyed had my eye on a few days ago, around the secretary's neck. "Happy birthday, Gary." Then they kissed, the sound of their lips and tongues tangling together filling the room. That sickening noise was like a slap across my face. How long had it been since I'd seen him look at someone with such devotion? Couldn't remember. It had been over 2 months since he'd last come home. When I called, he'd always hang up impatiently after just a few words. The worst was when he yelled, "Nick, are you fucking kidding me? If you're that horny, just buy a toy and take care of yourself." I was stunned silent for a long time after that. Maybe that's when the love died. Inside the room, the mood was hot and heavy. The secretary had already spotted me standing in the doorway. He shot me a defiant smile and traced circles on Julian's chest with his finger. "Julian, honey, the omega cooed, who's more charming, me or your husband?" Julian let out a sarcastic laugh. He flicked the ash from his cigarette with one hand and patted the secretary's ass with the other. "Babe, don't bring up such a buzzkill when we're having fun. Besides," he added with a wicked smirk as he thrust his hips, "you already know who's more charming, don't you?" The secretary blushed and playfully hit his chest. Then someone asked him what the difference was between being with a beta and an omega. After all, everyone in their circle knew that Julian, a handsome and wealthy alpha, had married an exceptionally plain beta who didn't even have pheromones. Julian blew a smoke ring and answered with a smirk. "Omegas are just more fun. They're wild and shameless. Betas are stiff and boring, especially the one at home. I've been sick of him for a long time." "A long time he's been sick of me?" My nails dug into my palms, but I couldn't feel a thing. Suddenly, the secretary gasped and looked toward the door. "Mr. Nick." Julian's eyes snapped to me. There was a flicker of panic, but it was quickly replaced by brazen indifference. My heart felt numb. I couldn't even feel the pain anymore. I didn't run. I calmly walked into the room. The people around us shifted uncomfortably. "Nick, what are you doing here? You should have told us you were coming. I would have picked you up." I ignored them and walked up to Julian, my voice flat. "Julian, do you remember what day it is?" No drama, no accusations. Just a simple question like any other ordinary moment between us. 3 years ago, he'd chosen to register our marriage on my birthday. He said that way, he'd always remember the day he married the person he wanted to protect for the rest of his life. Julian looked blank for a second. I already had my answer. I gave a bitter smile, slipped the ring off my finger, and placed it on the table. "Julian, let's get a divorce." As soon as the words left my mouth, everyone froze. Then they started trying to talk me out of it. Julian's face darkened. In an instant, his bitter coffee pheromones flooded the room, an aggressive, overpowering presence. The omega in his lap trembled in fear. As a beta, I was completely unaffected. I just turned and walked out. "Nick, are you sure about this?" His voice was low and menacing. I paused. "I'll have my lawyer draft the papers and send them to you." Someone was still trying to get me to reconsider when Julian furiously kicked the table. With a crash, a wine bottle rolled to a stop at my feet. What a piece of work. Let him go. The moment the door closed behind me, His mocking voice echoed in my ears. He lives a life of luxury. He doesn't have to lift a finger. I give him whatever he wants. Who in this city doesn't envy him? What more could he possibly be unhappy about? He's just spoiled. He needs to learn his place. Give him a couple of days, and that pathetic creature will come crawling back. That one word, pathetic, cut me to the bone. I closed my eyes, leaned my head back against the elevator wall, his last words replaying in my mind. I had the fancy car, the mansion. What more could I possibly want? Maybe he never knew what I truly wanted. Back when we were starting his company, we'd squeezed onto a tiny mattress in a basement apartment to save money. We could barely even lie down flat. We couldn't afford instant noodles in a cup, so we'd buy the cheap packets, sharing them bite for bite until not even the broth was left. When our clothes wore out, we used them as pajamas. We stretched every penny. We'd look at each other in our shabby state and just laugh. His eyes, back then, were always filled with the most intense love. I never complained, never looked down on him, never demanded he become some big shot. But he felt terrible about it. He'd wrap his arm around my shoulders and solemnly promise that one day he would make it big, and I would live a life everyone envied. He kept his promise. But the boy with the sincere, loving eyes died forever in that damp basement. As I was lost in thought, the elevator suddenly lurched and began to plummet. The force of it sent me sprawling to the floor in terror. I've been afraid of the dark since I was a child, and now that fear was magnified 1,000 times. For a moment, I couldn't hear anything. My head spun, and a sense of impending doom washed over me. It wasn't until a warm, large hand gripped my shoulder and a voice called my name that I snapped out of it. Nick, Nick, don't be scared. Deep breaths. In, out. Good boy, you're doing great. Following his rhythm, I slowly came back to myself. The man's voice was unfamiliar, but incredibly pleasant. He gently rubbed my back, calming me down, as patient as if he were talking to a child. Just then, a strange, unfamiliar heat bloomed inside me. My heart raced, and an absurd thought crossed my mind. I was going into heat. In recent years, research on abiobiology had made huge strides. A new technology had recently emerged that could give betas an artificial gland, effectively turning them into omegas. The moment I heard the news, I went for a consultation. The technology was still in the experimental phase with no guarantee of success. But I couldn't stand seeing the look of pained disappointment on Julian's face every time he went into his rut and couldn't mark me. He would always say, "If only you were an omega." So I went for it, volunteering for the experiment, even knowing there could be severe side effects. The experiment had 4 stages, and I was already in the second. The researchers told me that during this stage, I might experience symptoms like an omega's heat, and that it would be best to have my partner nearby. I had planned to tell Julian the good news as a gift for our anniversary. Now, it just seemed like a pathetic joke. My body felt like it was on fire. An indescribable craving grew from the pit of my stomach, spreading like wild vines. Nick, what's wrong? I bit my lip hard, trying to regain control, but it was useless. My consciousness was slipping away. I grabbed the arm of the man in front of me. My breath came out in hot, ragged pants. "Sir, I'm in heat. Please help me." Just then, the elevator doors opened, and a beam of light illuminated Edward's deep, dark eyes. My vision swam, but I could make out his face. He was so handsome it made my heart flutter. Rescue workers helped us out of the elevator and made sure we were both okay. By then, I had lost all reason, clinging to Edward like a desperate vine. "Help me." Edward's dark eyes were like bottomless pools. Without a word, he took off his jacket, wrapped it around me, and carried me away. The moment we were inside, he pressed me against the door, his eyes devouring me. His predatory gaze swept over my face, inch by inch. I was in agony, clutching his arm. Edward let out a low chuckle. In that moment, he looked like a demon come to steal my soul. "Do you know who I am?" I couldn't understand what he was saying. I just wanted him to hold me. As if he was afraid of hearing an answer he didn't want, he spoke first, tilting my chin up to meet his gaze. He said, each word deliberate, "Remember this. My name is Edward. I'm a good, respectable man. And if you sleep with me, you have to take responsibility. I'm not a nice guy. When I want someone, I get them one way or another. With that, he pushed me onto the bed. I was lost in a sea of sensation. 1 minute before midnight, he kissed my brow and whispered gently in my ear, "Happy birthday, my love. May you be happy every single day." We spent a wild night together. When I woke up the next morning, taking in my surroundings and the undeniable state of my body, I realized just how insane my actions had been. A wave of guilt hit me as I thought about my moral failings. But then I remembered, Julian and I were getting a divorce. He could have his fun, so I could have mine. There was nothing to feel guilty about. Edward was still asleep. The sunlight hitting his profile made him look impossibly handsome. I rubbed my temples and, wincing in pain, put on my clothes. The fabric scraped against the back of my neck, and the sting was sharp. I couldn't imagine how savagely he had bitten my nape last night. Still, I was the one who had shamelessly begged him for help. I couldn't just leave without a word. But I couldn't think of any other way to thank him. I pulled the only cash I had, $1,000, out of my pocket and left it on the nightstand. I whispered a silent apology and walked out. I had already completely forgotten Edward's warning from the night before. First, I went to a pharmacy and bought a scent blocker patch to put on my neck, just in case. I was so exhausted and focused on finding a lawyer that I didn't even notice the strange look the cashier gave me. Being immune to alpha pheromones, I had no idea that I was drenched in Edward's overpowering, woodsy scent, a dead giveaway that left little to the imagination. After I had a lawyer draft the divorce papers, I was about to head home to pack my things and have Julian sign them. But then the research institute called, telling me there might be a problem with the second stage of the experiment. I rushed over. The researchers had initially said the heat symptoms would only occur once or twice during the second stage. But based on the previous batch of test subjects, the frequency could increase to once or twice a week. If not properly managed, it could be life-threatening. But that wasn't even the worst part. The research for the third stage had hit a wall and wasn't progressing. That meant the heat symptoms could persist for a very, very long time, maybe indefinitely. Before, blinded by love, I had fearlessly jumped into this risky experiment. Now I realized how incredibly stupid I'd been. My mind went blank. My nails dug deep into my flesh. Can I stop the experiment now? Is it too late? My voice was hoarse and trembling. Once the injections have been administered, there's no going back. Whatever side effects arise, you'll just have to accept them. The news hit me like a ton of bricks. I sank into the chair, stunned. Was I going to become some kind of animal in constant heat, begging people for relief? I didn't even have a regular partner now. How was I supposed to get through this endless second stage? There was no way I was going back to Julian. Absolutely not. The thought of it disgusted me. I stumbled home in a daze. I had just taken off my shoes when Julian's furious voice came from behind me. "Where have you been? Why are you just getting back now? Who gave you the nerve to stay out all night?" The man who hadn't been home in ages was, for some reason, sitting on the sofa waiting for me. The guy who stays out for a month at a time is asking me why I was out all night. How ridiculous. From the dining table, the sound of a birthday song started playing. "Happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you." It was coming from a lotus-shaped candle. It must have been playing all night. Yesterday, I had cooked a huge meal and waited for him for 3 hours. The hope I'd felt then was as sharp as the sound was grating now. Ignoring my exhaustion, I walked over and threw the birthday cake, the one celebrating our 3rd anniversary, into the trash. Julian froze for a second. Yesterday, I didn't want to hear his excuses. I cut him off. "The divorce papers are here. Sign them. We split the assets 50-50. Suddenly, Julian grabbed my arm, his brow furrowed in disbelief. "Are you fucking serious? Nick, there's a limit to throwing tantrums." I shot him a cold look. You know me, I'm stiff, boring, and predictable. I don't throw tantrums. Before he could say more, his eyes fixed on my neck and his expression changed drastically. He grabbed the back of my neck and slammed me against the wall. My head hit the wall hard, and I trembled with pain. Nick, why do you smell like someone else? He violently ripped the scent blocker off my neck. When he saw the bite marks, he lost control in a way I'd never seen before. Who the fuck were you with last night? Tell me. Julian punched the wall, a furious beast with rage boiling in his eyes. I smirked, a strange sense of satisfaction welling up inside me. What's it to you? I'll ask you one more time. Who? He roared, his voice echoing through the living room. When I didn't answer, he bit down on my neck. I went rigid, a wave of nausea washing over me. I used all my strength to break free. Don't touch me. You're disgusting. Julian just slapped me across the face, hissing through clenched teeth. Heh, you think I'm disgusting? Look at you. You're my husband, and I'll do whatever the hell I want with you. I clutched my stinging, swollen cheek, my head ringing. For a second, Julian's expression flickered with panic, but it was quickly replaced by a look of entitlement. I couldn't believe that the man who used to fret for ages if I so much as nicked my finger peeling an apple had actually hit me. Julian, you son of a bitch. With tears in my eyes, I swung my fist hard into his smug face. Julian staggered back, steadied himself, and licked the blood from his lip with a sneer. No wonder you want a divorce. I guess I just can't satisfy you. Can I? He dragged me into the bathroom and pushed me under the shower, letting the ice-cold water pour over my head. He started unbuttoning his shirt as he spoke. You should only smell like me. He grabbed my face and tried to kiss me. Get off me. I said no. Don't touch me. I pushed him with all my might. The second his lips brushed my collarbone, I started shaking uncontrollably. Just then, Julian's phone rang. There was an emergency at the office that needed his immediate attention. Only then did he let me go. He straightened himself up, tore the divorce papers to shreds, and threw them at me. He grabbed my face and said viciously, "You want a divorce? In your dreams." Then, he slammed the door and left. I gasped for air like I just escaped death, sliding down the wall to the floor. I covered my eyes with my hand, letting my tears mix with the cold water streaming down my face. The pain was bone deep. That last shred of a beautiful memory had been completely destroyed. After that ordeal, I came down with a high fever that afternoon. I don't know if it was a side effect of the injections, but my already weak body was now so dizzy I could barely walk. I made it downstairs before I collapsed. Nick, was I delirious? Why did I keep hearing that beautiful voice? When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed with an 4 in my arm. That familiar yet strange man was standing a short distance away, looking out the window, his expression unreadable in a sharp black suit. Sensing my gaze, Edward walked over. He touched my forehead, then let out a long sigh of relief. The fever's finally broken. Just then, a doctor came in and ran a series of tests to confirm I was really okay. Mr. Edward, your husband is out of danger, but his body is severely depleted and still very weak. He'll need to rest and recuperate. Edward nodded naturally. Thank you, doctor. I'll make sure of it. Husband? What was that all about? After the doctor left, I asked in a raspy voice, "What are you doing here? You don't know why I'm here?" He smirked. "I'm here to collect a debt, of course." I was confused. He was chasing a debt all the way to the hospital? His gaze was heavy. You didn't think you could just toss $1,000 at me and we'd be even for last night, did you? That was my first time. Do you think I'm that cheap? His first time. No wonder he was so clumsy, so reckless. My face grew hot. Given his looks and build, he was a high-end, clean product. At least it was just about money. I breathed a sigh of relief and carefully chose my words. I wasn't aware of the going rate. How does 100,000 sound? The going rate? Edward's face turned black as soot. He didn't answer. I tried again. How about 188,000? For good luck. Edward looked like he was about to laugh and scream at the same time. He ground out 188,000. Nick, you're really something else. When he said my name, a chill went down my spine, but I didn't think too much about how he knew it. Suddenly, the researcher's words echoed in my head. The side effects of the injections would likely be with me for a long time. Based on the once-a-week heat cycle they described, I desperately needed a clean, stable, long-term partner. My gaze shifted to Edward, and without thinking, I blurted out, "Mr. Edward, would you be interested in a long-term business arrangement?" I tried to organize my thoughts to make my proposal sound as convincing as possible. "Mr. Edward, look, places like high-end clubs are full of shady characters. Dealing with that kind of clientele every day must be draining. A man of your caliber shouldn't be wasted in a place like that. You should be shining somewhere else." I said it with conviction. Edward raised an eyebrow, amused. "And where, in your opinion, should I be shining?" All right, he was playing along. He was smart. I looked him straight in the eye and said firmly, "In my bed." Edward nearly choked. He coughed a few times, a faint blush spreading across his cheeks. I pressed my advantage. "Let's work together. I'll pay you a handsome monthly fee. I won't ask for much, you'll just need to be with me twice a week, and you can't be with anyone else during that time." I laid out my needs with complete sincerity. When I finished, Edward leaned back in his chair, staring at me intently. Suddenly, he smiled, a wicked and knowing look in his eyes. "So, after all that beating around the bush, you just want to keep me?" He leaned in close, and my heart hammered in my chest. I flinched back, but there was nowhere to go. Being called out so directly made me feel a little flustered. Sure, why not? Good money, and I only have to serve one client. Sounds like a great deal for me. I'm in. Just don't you regret it. His voice was hypnotic, laced with a confidence that felt like a guarantee. At the time, I just thought he was worried I couldn't afford his high price. It was only later that I realized he had confidently marked me as his prey, and I had just invited the wolf into my home. Edward reached out and gently stroked my right cheek with his thumb. A tingling sensation spread across my skin. "Does it still hurt?" His voice was full of concern. I froze for a second, then realized he was asking about the cheek Julian had slapped. I didn't want to talk about my wounds with a stranger. I turned my head away from his touch and shook my head. Edward's hand hung in the air for a moment before he slowly lowered it, clenching it into a fist. "Get some rest. I'm going to go buy my patron some food." As he turned to leave, I realized he was talking about me. This guy, he was certainly thorough when money was involved. I couldn't forget about the divorce. I couldn't stand being married to Julian for another day. I called Julian's assistant to ask about his schedule. As soon as the assistant picked up, he started complaining. "Don't even ask, sir. The boss got beat up by someone and is still laid up in the hospital. And we've got a huge problem with a major deal. I'm completely swamped. The boss keeps asking for you. When are you going to come see him?" I looked out the window at the traffic below, tapping my finger on the windowsill. "I see. I'll visit him in a little while. And stop calling me his husband. I'm divorcing Julian very soon." The assistant was stunned. Before he could say anything, I hung up. As I got back to my room, I overheard Edward on the phone, sounding very pleased. "Good job. Break the bastard's left arm, but leave the right one. He needs it to sign the divorce papers." He couldn't be talking about Julian, could he? No way. It had to be a coincidence. I muttered to myself. I stayed in the hospital for 2 days. When I was discharged, I asked Edward to find me a few burly guys for backup. They were all huge, carrying steel pipes. Anyone would have thought I was a mob boss on my way to collect a debt. "Boss, you point, we hit. You say east, we don't go west. Wasn't this a bit much?" I looked at Edward. He seemed to have anticipated my look and turned his head away, feigning innocence. Okay, I didn't get it, but I respected it. I went to Julian's hospital room. His head was wrapped in bandages, and his left arm and right leg were in casts. He lay on the bed, stripped of his usual arrogance. I pushed the door open and walked to his bedside. When he saw it was me, he frowned and started complaining. "Your husband is in the hospital for days, and you, his husband, don't even bother to visit? You only show up now? Do you even care about me? What, were you waiting for me to die?" He grabbed an apple from the nightstand and threw it at me. A hushed voice came from outside the door. "Bro, he's just barking. Stay calm. Stay calm." I sidestepped the apple, picked it up from the floor, and started peeling it as I replied. "What a shame. I guess I'm not lucky enough to hear such good news. Julian nearly choked on his anger. I finished peeling the apple. Just as he was about to take it, I tossed it into the trash. It's rotten. Rotten from the inside out. Rotten things belong in the trash. I said it seriously. All right, now let's get down to business. I pulled out the divorce papers and put them in front of him. His expression changed. I told you I'm not signing. I will never sign. You don't have a choice. Just then, the burly guys stormed in and restrained Julian. Julian struggled furiously. I said, I'm not signing. You dare try to force me? I held up a flash drive. I've cleaned up your company's messes more times than I can count. How much dirt do you think I have on here? Enough to put you away for a long time. I don't want to make things ugly. A clean break is better for everyone. Julian stared at me, dumbfounded, as if seeing me for the first time. Nick, Julian. I was never some helpless flower who needed you to survive. I'm not stupid. I just chose not to play games with the person I loved. But obviously, I don't need to worry about that anymore. I shoved the pen into his hand. Sign it. You sign and you get the flash drive. Seeing how determined I was, he finally started to panic. I won't sign. Nick, I don't want a divorce. Nick, I was wrong. Please, give me another chance. His tone became almost pleading, but I felt nothing. Hold him down and make him sign, I said, glancing at him coolly. Julian's bodyguards forcibly guided his hand as he signed the papers. I don't want to. Nick, didn't you love me most of all? Let's stop fighting. Let's go back to how we were. Please? He was counting on my love for him, the love he had trampled on again and again. I didn't bother arguing about the past. I just said flatly, I don't love you anymore. Not now, not ever. Do you understand? Julian's eyes filled with terrifying, broken blood vessels. His gaze went dim, and a tear splashed onto the contract. He struggled, but it was useless. I looked at the signed contract, feeling a sense of relief, like a dark cloud had finally lifted. I put the flash drive on the table, cutting our final tie. I turned and left without a second thought. Julian fell heavily from the bed, crying and begging me not to go. Nick, I was wrong, don't go. Don't leave me, please. He reached out, trying to grab something, but caught nothing but air. All that was left for him was a cold, closed door. As soon as I stepped out of the room, I felt a soft, fuzzy sensation on my shoulder. Edward had buried his head in the crook of my neck, chuckling softly. I was about to push him away when he grabbed my hand. Just a second. My blood sugar is low. He ate the entire breakfast I'd been too nauseous to touch. What low blood sugar? Just as I was about to lose my patience, he stood up straight. Recharged. He drove me to my new apartment. Not long after, he showed up at my door with a suitcase. Seeing my confused expression, he explained, people in my line of work have a code of ethics. When a client needs service at a moment's notice, we have to be there. He made it sound like he was thinking only of me, his words perfectly reasonable. He sighed dramatically, but as you know, I live way out in the suburbs. My financial situation is limited. To get from my place to yours, I'd have to break 2 rental bikes, take several subway lines, transfer to a dozen buses. Just listening to him gave me a headache. Did he live on the other side of the planet? Thinking about my current situation, I knew I couldn't afford to wait. After I agreed to let him move in, we settled into a roommate-like existence. I laid down 3 rules. We would not interfere in each other's lives. He volunteered to do all the housework as his rent. Life was surprisingly pleasant. One evening, I was watching TV on the sofa while Edward carefully cut fruit into small pieces and fed them to me. He casually draped his arm over the back of the sofa, making small talk. Suddenly, he placed his hand on the back of my neck, his thumb stroking the skin as he said, "You're a beta, aren't you? Why do you go into heat?" I stiffened and pulled away from his touch, my voice cold. That's none of your business. After that, I started to deliberately keep my distance from him. Until one ordinary day when I collapsed in the bathroom. Edward frantically picked me up and rushed me to the hospital. On the way, his assistant called. "Boss, I found something out about your husband. 3 months ago, he joined an experimental gland transplant program at Supernova Labs. It's supposed to turn betas into omegas. Edward nearly crushed his phone, his eyes sharp enough to kill. Just as Edward carried me out of the building, we ran into Julian, who had been camping out downstairs. Ever since he'd recovered, Julian had been trying to win me back, even abandoning his work to wait outside my building, refusing to leave no matter the weather. Seeing me in Edward's arms, Julian's fists clenched, and fury radiated from him. "Edward, what the hell? What are you doing with my husband?" Edward kicked him without a second thought. "Shut your mouth, you piece of shit. Why did you force Nick to get a gland transplant? Do you have any idea how dangerous it is for a beta to become an omega?" Julian fell to the ground, muttering in a daze, "Gland transplant? Become an omega?" I woke up to the sound of arguing outside my door. Julian was trying to get into my room, but Edward was blocking his way, punching him in the face again and again. Julian fell to his knees outside the door, looking completely broken, calling my name over and over. "Nick, I shouldn't have said those things to you. I'm sorry, you're better than any omega. Get the hell away from him." Edward had a few security guards drag Julian away. He came back into the room, his eyes red-rimmed, and couldn't stop himself from yelling. "To do something like this for that scumbag, are you a fucking idiot? Do you love him that much?" His voice cracked on the last few words. It was the first time I'd ever heard him swear. Before I could react, he pulled me into his arms, comforting me. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that. I'm not mad at you. I'm mad at that bastard for not knowing how to cherish you, how to love you." He held me tightly, as if he was afraid I would disappear from his life. I didn't respond, just said coolly, "I haven't had a chance to ask the CEO of the Jaden Group what he's doing pretending to be an escort. Is this fun for you?" I let out a mocking laugh. From their argument, I had pieced together Edward's true identity. He was the rival Julian saw as a thorn in his side, the one who opposed him at every turn. It must have been quite a sacrifice for him to lower himself to this for so long. Was it all just to piss Julian off? Edward stiffened. "You know, I'm sorry. I never meant to lie to you." He gave a bitter laugh, his eyes full of pain. "Can't you tell? I'm in love with you. So in love that I'd do anything, use any means, just to have a connection with you, to find a way into your heart. I had considered many possibilities, but never this one." His expression was serious, without a hint of a joke. I was speechless. How long had it been since someone told me they liked me? I had started to believe I really was the boring, unlovable block of what Julian had described. And now someone was saying they liked me. I almost laughed. "You should know I'm just an ordinary beta. We're not naturally compatible with alphas like you. And I can't become an omega. You should find an omega who's a good match for you." I used to believe that true love could overcome anything. People always said betas didn't have glands and weren't suited for alphas, but I didn't believe them. Not until I'd crashed and burned. I didn't want to go through that pain again. Edward's eyes were red. "Why aren't we compatible? I like you because you're Nick. I don't care if you're an omega or a beta or an alpha. I don't need you to be an omega. I just need you to be you. Healthy, whole, and happy. That's all I want. Besides, you've never been ordinary to me. You've always been one of a kind." I was stunned. A long, long time ago, when I was very young, someone had said something like that to me. Back then, no one in my family liked me. My alpha father couldn't believe he'd produced such a useless beta child, a fact that embarrassed him in front of our relatives. My mother was weak and blamed my existence for the rift between her and my father. I grew up surrounded by insults and doubt, always trying desperately to make people see my good qualities. His words were the first time I'd felt the warmth of validation. Maybe I wasn't so bad after all. And now I knew it was true. I deserved to be loved. Thinking back on our time together, he had constantly been closing the distance between us, seeping into my life, but I never felt invaded. In fact, I think I'd smiled more in the past few weeks than I had in the last 3 years combined. Being with Edward felt easy. I was no longer anxious, constantly trying to please someone else. Maybe it was time to let go of the past and move forward, to enjoy the journey and feel loved. instead of chasing some impossible outcome. The day I accepted Edward's confession, he set off a sky full of fireworks to celebrate. A wish I'd written in my childhood diary was finally coming true, all these years later. At the same time, we got good news. Edward had found experts from all over the world to design a treatment plan for my condition. They could minimize the risks and restore my hormone levels to what they were before. Edward let out a long sigh of relief. He pulled me into his arms and kissed my forehead. My love, don't ever hurt yourself for anyone again. Nothing and no one is worth gambling your health for. I need you to be healthy and happy every single day. Wrapped in his love, my heart felt warm enough to burst. The phone rang while I was reading. It was Edward's assistant, calling in a panic to tell me that a competitor had drugged Edward, sending him into an early rut. He was afraid of hurting me, so he hadn't told me and was trying to fight it on his own. I rushed to the address the assistant gave me. It was in the same building I used to live in. I opened the door to a dark apartment. The only light came from a sliver of moon between the living room curtains, illuminating a strong arm. As I got closer, I heard heavy, ragged breathing. In a dizzying motion, Edward had me pinned beneath him. He was fighting a war between reason and desire, muttering over and over, "Nick is mine. Can't hurt my husband." He buried his face in my neck, sniffing. The hot breath on my skin sent shivers down my spine. As if confirming I was the one he was looking for, he began to cover my neck in searing kisses. They traveled up to my mouth, and he kissed me with an almost feral intensity. "Edward, you're hurting me," I whimpered, tears welling in my eyes. The rough kiss softened into a gentle licking, like a big cat soothing a wound. He whined, clinging to me. "My Nick, my sweet husband. Be nice to me, I feel so awful." He was delirious, rubbing against me, his eyes wet and pleading like a big dog desperate for its owner's comfort. Edward seemed vulnerable, but his strength was overwhelming. He held my waist so tightly I couldn't move. He was so cute and pitiful like this, I didn't know how to resist. I could only hold him, giving him all the security I could. Just then, my phone rang. I was about to decline the call, but my hand slipped and I answered. It was one of Julian's friends. "Julian's in his rut, and it's worse than ever. He's screaming for you. Nick, please, you have to come see him." The background was noisy. I could faintly hear the sound of Julian breaking things. "Nick, I need Nick." "Julian, honey, let me help you." Gary's voice chimed in. "Get out. All of you, get out. I only want my Nick." The sound of his faint sobs irritated me. "We have nothing to do with each other anymore. Stop calling me." Hearing Julian's voice, Edward started gnawing on the back of my neck like a wolf stalking its prey. "Please, Nick, he's not going to make it without you." I threw my phone across the room. "Then let him die." Edward pressed me against the floor-to-ceiling window. To my surprise, I could see my old apartment perfectly from here. At that very moment, Julian was pressed against his own window, his eyes wide and crazed as he pounded on the glass, looking desperately in my direction. "Husband, don't look at him. You're mine." A moment later, we heard banging on our door. It was Julian. "Nick, come out. Nick, I was wrong. Please, just look at me. Nick, I miss you so much." His voice was thick with sobs. Edward covered my ears and continued his ministrations. After what felt like an eternity, the banging turned into scratching. The sound was unbearable. Edward snapped. Like a furious beast, he strode to the door and flung it open. Afraid he would hurt someone, I hurried after him. Julian was kneeling at the door, clutching one of my old pajamas I'd thrown out, sniffing it like a madman. He was a mess, unshaven and pathetic. The moment he saw me, his eyes lit up, and he nearly lunged. "Nick," Edward snatched the pajamas from his hands. "You don't have the right to touch my husband's things." Then he kicked Julian square in the chest, sending him sprawling to the floor, unable to move. "You even think about looking at my husband again, and I'll rip all 3 of your legs off." The second Edward slammed the door, he was back to being a clingy dog. He pressed me against the door, a storm of anxiety swirling around him. "Don't love him, please? Love me. Love me." He repeated the words over and over. He couldn't find my gland, so he resorted to biting me, again and again, marking my body with his pheromones. He filled the air with his strong, woodsy scent until it was all I could smell. My baby, my husband, I finally found you. I kissed his furrowed brow, my voice firm and steady, trying to soothe his insecurity. Sure, it's okay. I love you, Edward. Inside, our world was full of love. Outside, there was only desolation. Julian lay on the ground like a dying dog. He struggled to press his ear against the door, listening with an almost pathological desperation to the faint sounds of my voice to ease his suffering. Nick, when security finally dragged Julian away, his clothes were disheveled. A passerby filmed it and posted it online. He was labeled a perverted exhibitionist. Soon, Julian was infamous. For a man so concerned with his image, it was a fatal blow. His personal scandal caused immense damage to his company's reputation. The stock plummeted, and the board of directors fired him. In an instant, he lost his fame and fortune, and it was unlikely he would ever recover. He never showed up in my life again. Edward always found new ways to be perfect, to the point where you couldn't find a single flaw. He supported me when I decided to go back to school and helped me build my career. My professional success made me more confident. He was always saying I was too brilliant and beautiful and that my personality was so great it made him insecure, that he wanted to tie me to his belt loop and never let go. I thought there might be something wrong with his eyes, and his perception of reality was definitely strange. One day, I got so tired of hearing it, I just said, "Fine, let's get married. Deal." We got our license just 1 minute before the clerk's office closed. Edward smiled with such pure, goofy happiness that I couldn't help but smile back. The sunset that day was more beautiful than any I'd ever seen. It wasn't until much later, long after we were married, that I found an old photograph tucked into a book he always kept on his nightstand. In the photo, he had his arm around a little boy, his smile warm and genuine. On the back, in a child's handwriting, it said, "Nick and Edward will be together forever." It turned out that all the coincidences, all the chance encounters, were part of his plan all along. Edward's POV. Once upon a time, there was a little boy who was always called a bastard, the other woman's worthless kid. No one liked him, not even the mother he lived with. Unfortunately, I was that unlucky kid, until I met a brave little boy named Nick. He was 4 years younger than me. He always had this sweet smile when he said, "I like you, Edward." He was like a small sun, chasing away all the darkness in my life. I used to think he came from a happy family, but it turned out he was just as unhappy as I was. Worse than not being loved is being constantly torn down and insulted. He was always asking why he was just an ordinary beta that his parents didn't like. They always looked down on you, saw you through a distorted lens. But you were never ordinary. You were an amazing kid, a little son, and I liked you too. I wanted so badly to grow up with you, but our friendship only lasted for a short year. Then I was taken back to my family's home. By the time I came back to look for him, he was long gone. Time flew by. I climbed the corporate ladder, my work consuming my entire life. But I always found myself thinking about our time together. Maybe it was fate. When I finally found him again, he was with someone else. Just to see him, I secretly bought the apartment across from his. Like some kind of masochist, I watched them be happy together, a rat in the shadows spying on their life. I watched as the husband came home later and later, until one day he stopped coming home at all. The flowers in the window slowly withered, and his smiles became rarer and rarer. It hurt to see him loved by someone else, but it hurt even more to see him not be loved at all. I realized the only way to change the game was to become a part of it. Every single one of our encounters was planned by me, because you and I were always meant to be.